Well, to give in more detail again, the Kriya breathing, well, I can only say my way of doing it. Which is not a Buddhist or I think a Hindu way of doing it. It's totally reliant, trusting upon God. It's the gift of God. Well, basically, breathing's in 3 stages. You breathe in, you hold, and you breathe out. You don't hold the lungs empty. If you find naturally you just stop breathing, that's fine. You'll take a breath when you really need it, and you may not need it for some time. But that's not the goal. The goal is, again, really, for me, thankfulness to God for breath, the breath of life. So we fill the lungs, say to the count of, possibly quite short, say to the count of 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you've now filled to the top of the lungs. You're not forcing the chest out. It's diaphragm breathing, you understand? No? So the diaphragm goes down and the bottom of the lungs fill, and you visualize the air filling like you might fill a cup of water, a glass of water. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, you breathe out in reverse order, in that you imagine emptying the top of the lungs first down to the bottom. And it's a complete breath. You don't want to leave stale air in the lungs. And since you're breathing deeply and long, you do fill the lungs. I don't mean you strain, for goodness sake. I don't mean that. But it becomes quite natural and easy quite quickly. You may find 5 is too long a count. You might count it in even 3s, A very effective way of starting is simply to take 3 deep breaths in the form of a sort of double in breathing, where you fill the bottom of the lungs first and then the chest, and you hold 2, 3, and then you breathe out 1, 2. Top first, and then the lower lungs second. And straight into the next one. Breathe in, 2, hold, 1, 2, 3. Breathe out, 1, 2. So it's a sort of double in breathing and a double out breathing, but a triple hold. And you do 3 such breaths. And I think this really just floods locally the blood with oxygen, so that you don't find it burdensome to come into the steady, longer breathing of a counting. As I say, you might count 5, hold 5, breathe out 5, repeat, straight into the next breath. And you might just do 7 or 10 breaths for practice, and then have a rest and think about it. And might do it again, perhaps even later on. But again, it's best before you start the practice to do the 3 double breaths, as I call them. You breathe in, 2, hold, 2, 3, breathe out, 2. breathe in, 1, 2, and so forth. So you do 3 breaths to flood the lungs, basically with oxygen. That's what I think of it as anyway. And that makes the practice much easier. You're much more likely to pull it off. But I've been doing breathing exercises since about 11 or 12 years of age with Mum, so it may be harder for you than I think. You know what I mean? You do things when you're young, you find it easier later on, don't you? So I'm not tremendously mindful after a while of the breathing. In fact, very often I'm checking, or at least listening to, some of my recordings, because I'll do the Kriya in bed. You know, I might wake at 3 in the morning and I think, oh well, let's get the body right first. I'll just breathe properly. I'll do a bit of Kriya practice, and I might do anything. It might just be 20 breaths. It might be half an hour to an hour. It's not a discipline for me, you see. I'm not in training. I'm just thankful for the breath of God, and I think this is the way to start the day. It's the dead of night, and I lay straight on my back in the bed, and I've got the window open anyway, you see. I don't mean wide open, but I mean enough to ventilate the room pretty efficiently, Not freezing to death, though. That doesn't help, does it? In a cold climate. You might just open the window a very small crack in that case. Yes. You don't want to do a practice that becomes arduous and puts you off doing the practice. That will defeat you very easily. You want to make the practice something that's nice to do and just blesses your life. Sometimes you do a lot, sometimes you do a little. Perhaps you'll miss quite a bit, but you'll do it more often as you appreciate the value of it. It'll solve itself. Anything else to say about the Kriya? Well, the Eastern folk had all sorts of convictions about, you could be chanting Om while you're doing it mentally, and you could be focusing on the point between the eyebrows, and when you frown, you're concentrating on something. You could be focusing there, so to speak. No need to go cross-eyed, though. It doesn't help. I notice the Buddhists sometimes refer to looking at the end of the nose, but I think that would send you cross-eyed. I don't really fancy that. I think there's something special about steady, longer breaths, which is what we're doing here in the triangular breathing, you see. It's something about it that stabilizes the body and the mind and the emotions. And from my point of view, mine's helped because I listen to something that keeps my mind on spiritual things. I'm listening to my recordings. And I may fall asleep. Well, of course, the Buddhists and Hindus think this is terrible to fall asleep. You're supposed to be rigidly concentrating and focusing and imagining, the power rising and falling in the body, and I don't do that. I suppose because I feel I am not achieving enlightenment. I am just wanting to be devoted to God. He'll decide whether I'm to be enlightened and in what way. And that's absolutely lovely with me, whatever it is. So I'm purposed on a relationship with God, not on achieving enlightenment. I am enlightened, of course. I don't mean I'm one of these glorious avatars that goes walking on the water in the literal sense. I'm not a literalist, although I do believe in literal miracles. I'm quite sure they're what God can do and have done at any time. And a great blessing they seem to be to some people. But I'm not seeking that. I'm not even seeking healing, except when I really am pressed by illness, my own or someone else's. Then I sort of bring it to God, but not so much to pray. I try to avoid wanting desperately for healing, but rather want desperately in the circumstances to be right with God, such that the healing automatically follows. I do tend to take illness as some indication that I could be doing something spiritually that would avoid this. I wonder what I'm doing wrong spiritually. I don't mean I feel I'm to blame or sinful. I'm not Judaic in that sense. I think rather that I'm immature and a child. Lacking enough understanding. And so I seek God's face, so to speak, that I might have more understanding, or at least much more trust. Thank you, Dad. Let me listen to this a minute. Oh yes, I should make it clear that with practice, you very easily find that 5's too short, so you might be counting 6, 7, 8. I typically count 9. I count 9 in a strange way. I count the 9 itself in terms of 3s, so I think I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I find that it settles after a while. I speak relatively fast to begin with. I don't try to do that straight off from not practicing. So I might start breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But very quickly, the counting slows down within a few breaths, And you do what fits and is comfortable, see? But you won't be doing, 3 9s of 27, because that amounts to just about half a minute each breath. 2 breaths a minute is pretty slow breathing. I think there might be an association between slower breathing and longer living, but it may be, I'm not sure which way is causing what, that if you're calm you breathe more slowly, but if you breathe more slowly you tend to be calmer, you see. And of course, to the extent you are focusing on the breath, you're not focusing on whatever was pestering your mind before you started the practice. So it helps to clear the mind. It helps to distract you from certain stresses and worries you might have. But it also signals to the body, because of the calmness of the breathing, I think it signals to the body that the mind can settle as well. Things are okay. There's no emergency. There's not stress. It's the breathing that goes with a contented, calm, peaceful rightness, you see? So you can think of the breath as reflecting the state of the mind and emergencies and stresses, or you can think of the state of the mind and the body responding to the way you are breathing. So if you control the breathing in a calm way, the mind and the body settles accordingly. It may be in some measure that an abundance, and I do just mean an abundance, not a surplus, not some forced surfeit of oxygen in the bloodstream, but may get the right endorphins or whatever they are in the body, chemical reactions to the body working in a, or shall we say, a more beneficial way. I don't think the practice is to be hypnotic. And I'm not really clear what a self-hypnosis would be anyway, because hypnosis is usually the takeover of someone else's mind of one's own, and well, it's recommended you avoid such. It's not a good avenue to go down. Don't go down that one. We're now that there might be certain health practices that use hypnosis, but it's a bit like going to the hospital. I'd only do it if I was dying and didn't have another solution, and really wasn't too bothered about dying anyway. Then I wouldn't bother to go. I mean, don't go for self-hypnosis really, or any form of hypnosis. But there is something about calming the body down by a certain practice, and breathing is a key one. So I'm calling it Kriya, but you wouldn't be able to sell it to a Buddhist or a Hindu really, because they would see it as not Kriya at all, I think. So perhaps I should really just call it triangular breathing. And I don't mind, I could settle for that. But I did get the idea originally from Kriya. In fact, you could say my view of it degenerated almost immediately into this rather than what was being taught by some people. But that was, you might think, an arrogance, but I would like to rather frame it in terms of it was a trust in God, that what I'm asking of God is way beyond what I can achieve. It's okay to ask amazing things of God, because it's just a way of asserting in a childish way that you're impressed so much that you believe God can do anything relative to your own ability as a child. So see, the thing, isn't it? Oh, my dad knows everything. Oh, my dad can do everything. And then somewhere around, I don't know, 7 or 8, they start to say, you don't know everything, Dad, do you? No, love, but I do know most of the things that are more important. Why do you ask? And of course you tease them where you say, of course I do. I'm your dad. I can do anything. You can't, Dad, you can't. Well, I can do the things most of the things that are needed. The main thing is that you communicate to them that you love them to bits and you're there for them, isn't it? I'm getting, this is a digression, isn't it? But it's an important one, isn't it? We want to enlarge ourselves, don't we? Not destroy self, goodness no, but to enlarge self to include near ones, dear ones, loved ones, friends, people in need. Goodness, it's most of life, isn't it? It's here in this creation because we are in need, as I understand it, in need of coming to a spiritual maturity that we may enjoy fullness of life, life abundant, life eternal. So, I've devoted this recording to Kriya, or as I should be calling it, just triangular breathing, shouldn't I? And I was taught triangular breathing as a kiddie with Mum. We did. Yeah. This is a point. Although it sounded as though I was focusing on the lungs, I actually focus on sort of the back of the throat. If I can make a sound for a minute. Where when you breathe in with your mouth open, you can feel that back of the throat. I visualize the air moving there. But not too heavily. I mean, I just think of that occasionally. But, if I was focused anywhere, I'm not actually focused between the eyebrows or or the nose or the point of the nose or the lungs. I'm actually focused, if anything, in the throat there. Yes. Visualizing the air flowing there. Well, that's what I was taught as a kiddie anyway. And I used to do what I just called rhythmic breathing then, but it was triangular breathing, when walking. So I could be walking at some very modest pace, and I would breathe in to the count of 4 steps, hold to the count of 4, breathe out to the count of 4. Found I'd run out of breath, so try 3 next time, 3, 3, 3. And so you can do 2 breathing, which I found fun as a child. I did that quite a bit. In fact, I think I did that more than just sitting, breathing, As I say, I don't even sit now, whereas the Eastern people are, from my point of view, obsessed with posture. I mean, as if posture is going to make that much difference, but they feel a good posture and a straight spine is going to... Well, they're very much concerned with what they call Kundalini power, which the very phrase horrifies the earnest Christian. And to me, coming from a Christian point of view, I was extremely cautious about, but they're focusing on the notion that in some sense there's a power that's in the spine, the bottom of the spine, and you're bringing it up to the top of the head, the crown. But then there's some confusion in that there's a thought that the real power comes from outside the body and comes in through the medulla, the hollow in the back of the skull. Medulla is sort of situated just in there, near the brains. I'm not taken with either such. My view is that following the Jesus teaching, I suppose, not just suppose, I'm sure I'm following the Jesus teaching in that regard. I don't mean I follow all the Jesus teaching, but in that regard, that God dwells in us. He dwells in us because he loves us. We're his children. And Well, you stick close to your kids to look after them, and he sticks close to you and to me, because he cares for us always. And perhaps he does know the end from the beginning. He knows what fantastic person you're going to be. And he's very loving and kind. He's a dad, you see. That's the Jesus story as far as I'm concerned. It's not this frightening, judgmental, authoritarian, literalist God. He's a loving dad. Abba, Father, Dad. And he's not just the best dad in the world, he's the ultimate of best dads. Yes. Let me pause. Well, perhaps I don't need to say anything else now. That's most of what we need to say on triangular breathing, but to me it's not as important as thanking God. But it's a very good practice to, when I wake in the night, I do that to begin with. And that settles my mind and body to practice thankfulness, and perhaps to do a recording or listen to one of my recordings, or just go off to sleep. And I have in mind when I fall asleep that I'm in the arms of my dad. I'm curled up with him. I used to curl up with Mum in bed. Used to love it with Mum sleeping next to me. I was an only child. I didn't like sleeping in a room on my own. Anything to sleep in Mum's bed next to her. To be with Mum was everything. And now it's to be with my heavenly dad. Why not? I'm like that with my kids. Well, they're grown up now. The youngest one's 11, but oldest one's 49 or 50, I don't know. And I just love and care for them. Wonderful thing to be given the privilege of being a parent, or just caring for the young. You don't have to have given birth to them, do you? I mean, and perhaps not even people, but creatures. I've known ladies, old ladies, whose ministry is just caring for animals, feeding the birds, or rescuing cats. Presumably not both the same at once. Difficult to be a cat lover and have much to do with birds, isn't it?